Bro, if you thought this Washington Commanders offseason had already given you enough drama and juice, sit down, because what just went down today in Ashburn has the whole fan base in full send mode. And look, that is not an exaggeration. You know there is never hype here without a reason. This is the offseason that has been years in the making. Adam Peters is operating with a sense of urgency that tells you everything you need to know about the expectations for this 2026 squad. This is not about just showing up. This is about actually competing. The Commanders are building something real, and you cannot miss a single second of it. A safety raised in Bowie, Maryland, leading the entire league in run stops, just signed up to play at home. Nick Cross pulled up, and this defense is never going to look the same. But while you're celebrating that, Dorrance Armstrong Jr. has been grinding in silence for months with a contract year on the line and something serious to prove. And to close it out, there is a receiver walking out of San Francisco with a projected $67 million contract who could flip Jaden Daniels' passing game on its head. News 1, Nick Cross signs with the Commanders. Listen, there are signings that make sense on paper. There are signings that make sense tactically. And then there are signings that hit on every single layer you can think of. Football, business narrative, heart. The Nick Cross signing with the Washington Commanders is exactly that. Every level, all at once. Let's start with the basics. Who is Nick Cross and why should you care? Nick Cross is a 6-foot, 212-pound safety who was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts in the 3rd round of the 2022 draft. In 4 seasons with Indianapolis, there were 67 games played, including all 17 games in each of the last 2 seasons. That already tells you something, which, though, when this player is healthy, this player is on the field. No constant injuries, no disappearing from the roster. Always there week after week doing the job, and while doing that job, the stat line hit 304 total tackles, 5 interceptions, 12 passes defended, and 3.5 sacks in the career so far. Those are not superstar numbers, but they are definitely not bench warmer numbers either. What really jumps out with Nick Cross, and this is what you have to understand if you actually want to appreciate this move, is that 2025 production. Bro, this player tied for the league lead in run stops that turned into failed offensive plays among all safeties with 33. That is not a coincidence. That is not luck. That's a player who reads plays well, has real instincts, explodes to the ball, and does not let running backs pick up cheap yards on that side. In an era where safeties are more and more responsible for eating up space in zone coverage, Nick Cross brings something different to the table, a dog in the box who can play downhill with conviction. In 2025, there were also career highs in sacks with 2.5, quarterback hits with 6, and a tie of the best marking passes defended with 5. That says this is a player still on the way up, not someone trying to get back to a peak, but someone actively climbing toward it. This is year 5 coming up, which for a lot of safeties is exactly when the breakout hits, and Washington is catching that wave right at the perfect moment. That timing, fam, that is smart scouting work. But here's where the story really gets good, because Nick Cross is not coming to Washington just for a bag. This is a Bowie, Maryland product. DeMatha Catholic High School, 3 seasons at the University of Maryland. Honorable mention, all Big Ten, 3 straight years. Nick Cross is from here, bro. Grew up watching the Commanders, grew up with burgundy and gold in the bloodstream, and now there is a contract to play at home. Man, if that does not hit you in the feels a little bit, what are we even doing? That angle is not just romantic, it actually matters on the field. Players who come home to play for the local team with that kind of backstory have something extra they want to prove. There is a different kind of pride, a level of motivation that never shows up in any contract language. Nick Cross is going to want to prove that the spot was earned, not gifted, and that there is legit potential to become one of the best safeties in this conference. That mental chip is worth something. Ask any high-level coach, and there will be the same answer. Intrinsic motivation changes, on-field performance, tactically. How does Cross fit with what Dan Quinn and the defensive staff are building? The 2025 Commanders defense flashed at times, but also had some brutal stretches in run defense and in generating impact plays from the secondary. Cross attacks both issues. That presence in the box gives the defensive coordinator a lot more flexibility disguising looks. Cross can be used as a quasi-linebacker in heavy sets or unleashed as a blitzer out of the secondary, and with those 2.5 sacks in 2025, it is already clear that when the lane is there, the quarterback can be reached. And here is something that is key for the big picture. With Owe and Chason bringing heat off the edge, and with Armstrong potentially getting back to peak form, that Washington 2026 line of scrimmage is going to feel a whole lot more chaotic for opposing quarterbacks. And when there is chaos up front, safeties get more time to diagnose and react. Cross is going to eat off that improved pass rush. The system feeds itself. It is a defensive domino effect Adam Peters is putting together with real intent. How much is the price tag? Exact terms have not been made public, which in itself is interesting. When there is no noise about the numbers, it usually means both sides felt good about the deal. No bank-breaking contract, but not some bottom-of-the-roster minimum either. Nick Cross comes in as a solid starter, paid like one, with a serious hunger to prove there is even more on the table. Bro, this is exactly the kind of move that separates teams that build the right way from teams that just chase flashy names in the headline. Peters did not chase the name. Peters chased the profile. Okay, that signing gave me chills for reasons that go beyond pure X's and O's. But now, there is something going on inside Commanders Park that is just as fascinating and a lot more tense. Because there is a player almost everyone had quietly pushed to the side, and that player was not cool with being forgotten. News 2, Dorrance Armstrong Jr. breaks the silence. Listen, when Adam Peters went out and handed Oduf Owa a $100 million deal with $68 million guaranteed, the football world froze for a second. That was a statement. Then K'Lavon Chason came in on a 1-year, $12 million deal, a player who bet on self after a breakout 2025 and cashed in. And then Omenahu at $4 million, which in this edge market is basically highway robbery if the health holds up. 3 pass rushers, 1 clear message. The Commanders are dead serious about that outside defense. And in the middle of all that noise, there was one name missing from a lot of conversations. Dorrance Armstrong Jr., the player who was in the middle of the best season of the career when that knee decided things were done. 7 games of real ascent, real production, one of the most dangerous pass rushers on the roster, and then nothing, silence, darkness, surgery, rehab, and the league just kept moving like Dorrance Armstrong had never been there. But bro, that is not where the story ends, because this week, right in the middle of all the celebration over the new signings, Armstrong dropped a social media update that was absolutely calculated. Not an accident, not a nostalgia post, a statement. The update said there are about 4.5 months into the recovery. Everything is exactly on schedule and the body feels good, really good. And the timing on that post, right when everyone is talking about Owe, Chason, the new look on the edges in Washington, that is not random. Dorrance Armstrong Jr. clearly knows exactly what is being done. Think about the position this player is in for a second, because it demands serious mental toughness. There have been months of grinding in silence away from cameras while the front office is dropping north of $100 million on the same position group. It is not a one-for-one replacement. Technically, the roster spot is still there, but the message in the market is loud and clear. More is needed than what is already in-house, and what is already in-house includes real uncertainty about whether the old level can be reached again. That hurts. That tests the mind. And Armstrong answered the only way that really works. Work, silence, and one perfectly timed post when the moment hit. And there is something else that cannot be ignored. This is a contract year for Dorrance Armstrong Jr. The 4th-round pick from 2018 came to Washington looking for exactly what was being built during that first half of 2025. Proof that there is legitimate starting caliber impact in the NFL. The breakout was real. The numbers before the injury showed a player who understood the role, used explosiveness the right way, could bend the edge, and generate real pressure. Then the knee went. And now the case has to be rebuilt from scratch. This time with more competition stacked in front and the clock ticking faster than ever. Can Armstrong get back to that level? From a pure football standpoint, the profile is unique in this current Commanders edge room. Owe brings power and straight line attack. Chason is speed and leverage. Omenahu is depth and versatility. Armstrong at the best is the player who reads protections fast, can be a legit early down run defender without losing juice as a pure pass rusher, and has enough experience to process scheme concepts at a level a rookie or a newcomer to the system is not going to have in week one. That has value, and the coaching staff understands that better than anyone. Washington's plan with Armstrong is going to be gradual. There is no rush. There is no logic in pushing a player who is 4-ish months into a clean recovery just to have full-go reps for the first training camp practice. There will be patience. There will be a careful ramp-up. But if week one arrives and the health is there and everything right now says that is realistic, the real question becomes, where does Armstrong land on the depth chart? Oweh is locked in as the clear starter on one side, but that other edge is wide open between Chason, Armstrong, and the depth pieces. Chason signed a 1-year deal because the goal is to win that spot and cash in big. Armstrong needs that same spot for the future. That is going to be one of the most fascinating position battles of the 2026 training camp, and I am going to be glued to that storyline. What really earns respect in all of this, speaking as a fan, bro, is that Armstrong did not sit back and whine. No leaks, no drama, just a positive update, good energy, and a quiet watch me vibe. That is serious player mentality, and in a league where a lot of players talk heavy and deliver light, that kind of quiet, work-first attitude feels refreshing. Bro, if that does not give you at least a little hype for preseason snaps, I do not know what will. The Commanders were absolutely right to reinforce the position. Not doing that after an injury like Armstrong's would have been front office malpractice, but it would also be a huge mistake to just write this player off. There is something to prove here. And the talent, the track record, and the motivation are all there to back it up. A contract year comeback arc is one of the most powerful narratives in the NFL. And if Armstrong sticks the landing on that, bro, it completely reshapes how the edge room in Washington looks for the next few seasons. Do not sleep. Dorrance Armstrong Jr. has not delivered the final chapter in this story. Not even close. Okay, fam. Deep breath, because if you thought the first two stories were strong, what is coming next is on a totally different level. There is a rumor floating around with numbers so wild you have to double take. The figures are absurd. The player has a resume, production, a legit case, and everything is pointing toward Washington as a real landing spot. The name is not coming yet. You need the full context first. But once you get to the end, it will be crystal clear why this matters so much. News 3, are the Commanders about to open the checkbook for a receiver on a $67 million contract? All right, let's talk wide receiver, because this is the elephant in the room every Commanders fan has been watching grow for weeks. The need at the position is real, urgent, and still not fully addressed. Let me lay out the whole picture so it is clear why this particular rumor is such a big deal. Terry McLaurin is here. Terry McLaurin is always here, the reliable professional, one of the best route runners in the conference. That is not up for debate, but beyond Terry, what is actually there? A receiver room that is not scaring any defensive coordinator in the NFC. The Chigoziem Okonkwo signing at tight end was a smart move to give Jaden Daniels another weapon down the seam, but that does not solve the need for an outside receiver who can stretch the field, beat man coverage, and be a legit week-to-week threat defenses have to account for in the game plan. And then there is the Brandon Ayuk saga. Bro, how many weeks have we been hearing Ayuk is going to end up in Washington? The issue is San Francisco is not in any rush to let that player walk. It is not that Ayuk would not be a transformative piece. Absolutely would be. But hinging your entire receiver fix on a player who has not taken a game snap since 2024 as the big solution is risky. Very risky, and Peters knows that. That is why this other lane exists. Fox Sports is projecting that Washington lands a veteran receiver coming straight out of San Francisco, someone who knows the sophisticated West Coast passing concepts, someone who has spent time working alongside some of the best at the position in recent years and soaked in that technical excellence, someone with 15 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons combined. Someone who had a real breakout in 2024, doing 175 yards, 6 touchdowns, and became a core piece of that offense. And here comes the part that is going to grab you. SpotTrack, one of the most respected contract tracking sites around the NFL, is projecting that this receiver is going to sign a 3-year deal for $67 million. 3 years. $67 million for a player who in 2025, admittedly banged up for most of the year, put up 643 yards and 9 touchdowns. Bro, 9 touchdowns, 9. Hold up. Are you actually processing that? Because 643 yards sounds mid until you realize it comes with 9 scores. That is red zone efficiency. That is a player who shows up when it matters. Now, is that projected contract number probably inflated? Yeah, most likely. The same analysis that spits out that projection suggests the true market number is closer to $15 million per year, which works out to 3 years. $45 million, a price that makes a lot more sense for a receiver who is a strong complementary piece rather than an untouchable superstar. At that price, the Commanders can fit the deal under the cap structure without messing up what is being built on defense. And at that number, fam, this becomes a very good move because the case for this receiver as a number 2 next to McLaurin is strong. This is a physical player, good size, route running that has gotten better every season. Experience within complex offenses, and already has chemistry with other players who could end up in Washington. The learning curve to plug into what Dan Quinn and the offensive staff are setting up around Jaden Daniels would be way shorter than for someone coming from a totally different system. There is one more factor that really matters here. This player is clearly not in the long-term plans in San Francisco anymore. Adam Schefter has already put it out there. All signs point to the 49ers losing this receiver. When a team lets the second or even third receiver walk in the offseason, that is a statement about where they are headed on offense, and that is exactly when Washington needs to show up, checkbook ready, but brain still turned on. To avoid overpaying for something the market might naturally correct. Already guessed the name. This is Jawan Jennings, the Tennessee product, who went from speculative project in the early San Francisco seasons to one of the most reliable red zone targets in that 49ers offense. The player who caught 15 touchdowns in 2 years, the former roommate of, Brandon Ayuk in San Francisco. Fam, if the Commanders end up signing Jennings and eventually landing Ayuk, Jaden Daniels would be working with a receiver group that already knows each other, already has shared chemistry, and already speaks the same root concept language. That is the kind of thing money cannot directly buy. But Peters could buy into it indirectly with these moves. Is Jennings the type of signing that melts fans' brains? No. Let's be honest, this is not Devontae Adams. This is not Cooper Kupp. This is not the move that blows up social media with hype memes at 11 at night. But this is a rock-solid player with a clear role at a reasonable price who materially upgrades what Washington can do in the passing game and in the era of the salary cap. Sometimes that is worth way more than the big-name splash that leaves you with no ammo to fix the defense. The question right now is simple. Is Peters going to move quickly or let the market settle on a final number and then jump in? Because if Jennings drops into that 12 to 13 million per year range, this becomes an easy yes. If some team goes wild and actually hands over those projected 20 million per season, Washington probably walks away, but all the context points to a perfect landing spot for both sides somewhere in the middle that makes sense for everybody. And if this gets done, bro, Jaden Daniels is going to have more weapons than there were in the entire first season. McLaurin outside, Okonkwo down the seam, and now a receiver who knows San Francisco's system, knows modern offensive concepts, and just scored 9 touchdowns in a season while hurt. Picture that same player healthy, motivated, in a scheme tailored to the strengths. That is the kind of thing that gets me fired up as a fan. And it should get you fired up too. The Commanders are building something serious, piece by piece. It is not all about the giant headline. Sometimes the sum of the right parts is more powerful than a single explosive signing. And that, fam, is exactly what is happening in Ashburn right now, bro. Do you see what is happening with this Commanders team? This is not a front office making moves just for the front page. This is a front office methodically, intelligently, purposefully building a roster, a safety who grew up as a burgundy and gold fan and is coming home ready to become one of the best at the position. A pass rusher who has been grinding quietly for months and just sent the league a reminder that the story is not over. and now potentially a receiver who can give Jaden Daniels exactly the compliment needed for that passing game to level up. This is not a rebuild. This is not a team just participating. This is a team hungry to win now, with the right quarterback and with the right urgency to put the right pieces around that quarterback while the window is open. Adam Peters is playing chess while other teams are playing checkers. And as fans, there is the privilege of watching something special getting built in real time. The next video is going to be just as loaded because this is not slowing down, fam. Subscribe if you have not yet. Hit that bell so you do not miss anything, and drop a comment. Which move has you the most fired up right now? The cross signing, the Armstrong comeback, or the possible addition to the receiver room? Drop it below, and as always, hail to the Commanders.